Dr. Christine is not here yet.
Yes, you can go ahead. I can handle that.
All right. So we'll start formally without Dr. Christine then?
It's fine. We can proceed. Stella is here. Yeah.
All right. I'll share my screen. Is that all right, Doctor?
Sure.
Let's skip this. So good day to everyone. I would like to welcome you all to a consultative session on OLDN TV. My name is Samantha Salas, and I will serve as your host for this discussion. Again, this OLDN TV consultative session will revolve around the theme of practical integration in an organization as a performance strategy. To talk about the topic, we are honored to have three esteemed guests today. The first is Dr. Nathan Masunda from UNICAF University in Zambia. He's the Dean of Academics, as well as a consultant researcher and a lecturer in productions and operations management, quality management, project management, and supply chain and procurement management with 25 years of experience, both in the academic world and the corporate world. He is also a very proud member of the Institute of Directors, or IOD. Our second guest is Ms. Tsitsi Chundu, who is an HR consultant for Primo Capio in Zimbabwe. And she is also a teaching assistant in Africa Leadership and Management Academy, all the while being a member of the Organization Leadership and Development Network, or OLDN, and a COLD consultant for the continuous development of people. And our third guest is Ms. Regina Huba, who is the CEO of Transform Your Performance and a multicultural transformational leadership coach. She is also a global international speaker for topics such as humanizing the workplace through inclusive leadership. On top of all this, she is also the author of the book Speak Up, Stand Out, and Shine, and her signature framework, Powerful Leadership Transformation, or PLT. Before we begin, I'd like to take this opportunity to hand over the floor to our guests or our speakers. Dr. Nathan, Ms. Titi, Ms. Regina, would you like to address the audience very briefly?
Thank you very much, Samantha, and it's very nice to be around this afternoon. And I'm sure we're going to have a very wonderful discussion, and it's a privilege to be around, and I look forward to this wonderful discussion. Thank you very much, Samantha.
Thank you, Dr. Nathan. It's nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Ms. Titi?
Thank you very much, Samantha, and welcome to all our guests. It's good to be here, and I believe we're going to ignite some good conversation, and we're going to be very practical in our workplaces. And as this is a series that is going to be coming on board, I want to trust that all of us and even more will join so that we make the change in our organization. Thank you.
Ms. Regina?
Yes, good day to everybody, wherever you are on the planet. And I'm delighted to be here today and have this very international conversation. I trust that it will be inspirational, productive, and effective in the future.
So before we begin, I'd like to remind the audience to like the OLDN TV and COLD page, share this video and other posts as well. And please feel free to comment any of your questions on Facebook or here on the Zoom classroom. Now, as an opening question, I'd like to address this question to Ms. Titi and Dr. Nathan. How would each of you define practical integration in organizations? Of course, this is in relation to both small and medium enterprises and large organizations. Ms. Titi, please go ahead.
Thank you, Samantha. For me, practical integration is all about being able to harness the employees in terms of their physical abilities, cognitive, emotions. It's more of bringing the whole person to the job for them to be able to do their job. And also from an HR tip, when we are hiring in organizations, Samantha, we look at the skills, the knowledge, the attitudes, the values, the competences. So when we're looking at practical integration, we are now saying, are we being able to harness the knowledge that this employee does have, the abilities, the competence? Are we giving them the room? Are we giving them the space to actually participate, to fully engage in everything that is happening in the organization? And the whole idea at the end of the day is we are saying the moment the employee is fully engaged, is fully integrated, they are able to give more to the organization and to their, even to their own personal development. It's not even just about the organization, but when an employee is fully or practically engaged, they have got more they are offering to the organization and to their own personal development. So for me, that's practical integration, and it's very key and very important in our organizations.
It gives practical integration a deeper meaning, ma'am. We already see how wonderful this topic will be and how interesting it will be to see different perspectives. Dr. Nathan, how would you define practical integration?
Yeah, thank you very much, Samantha. Like Tusia said, this is a very important, in every organization, be it at maybe SME or in a large organization. You notice, Samantha, that organization integration, can also be achieved when the goals and objectives are aligned between the external and internal influences. We have in every organization the external as well as the internal influences. So you find that the organization alignment is going to promote this wonderful collaboration and teamwork when it is brought together across maybe all the departments of an organization, different work areas in an organization, be it an SME or maybe a large organization. So if these departments within that organization, all the employees come together and they work together, then they are going to achieve a very wonderful, practical integration. But if maybe, for example, a certain department like production or marketing is not aligned with maybe organization strategy, then we can conclude that organization is not really integrated. So I can define it in that way, in a practical way, in that way, Samantha.
Yes, doctor, it's very it shows that there's a sensible type of approach behind practical integration that involves alignment of all the departments, like you said. So
Yes.
moving on to another aspect of practical integration, let me ask this question to all three of you. What do you think is the correlation between practical integration and the concept of trust building within an organization? Let's start off with you, Ms. Regina.
Yes, trust for me is the basis for effective and productive collaboration in all senses. And in a team setting, employees will only feel comfortable sharing their best talents if they feel safe to do so, especially when it comes to sharing talents that are not explicitly requested by their job descriptions or by their managers. We call this psychological safety, right? So as an employee, if I want to share an idea, but I'm afraid to be made wrong or to be dismissed or ignored, then I'll end up covering or hiding. I'll hide my best ideas, and I may get frustrated over time because I'm not operating in an environment where I can express myself. And I cannot express what's really inside of me, my best self, my best ideas. And as I get more and more frustrated, I lose interest in my work and I get more disengaged, and eventually I may even leave. And I may take my $1 million idea to a different organization, right? Because it wasn't heard before. And in that organization, I'm hoping to then be respected, of course, and I am hoping that I can trust my manager to listen and honor me and my ideas. So it's really important to realize that greater trust generates higher creativity and therefore also benefits innovation. And it also positively impacts employee engagement and satisfaction, and greater engagement usually also leads to higher team effectiveness and productivity. So communication is improved in this way through trust, and there will be fewer conflicts, and there will be more time to focus on the task at hand, on the work itself. Trust isn't only important within a team, of course, and Dr. Nathan mentioned that right now as well. It's the management's responsibility to build trust through transparent and sufficient communication throughout the entire organization. So all the different pieces of an organization can work together more smoothly. So these are just a few examples of how trust impacts overall organizational culture. Greater levels of trust mean that the organization becomes a more agreeable place to work for everybody in it, and also everybody who works with it from outside, right? And I also believe that employee loyalty increases in that way. So again, in a nutshell, higher levels of trust lead to more creativity and innovation, higher productivity, and a better external image, which also makes it easier to attract new top talent, because we always want to attract the best people.
Definitely, ma'am. Dr. Nathan, any thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I think Regina has brought a very wonderful point there. And then, trust building, and Samantha, is very important, like it has also been mentioned in an organization. Because when you look at trust itself, it means, having confidence in both your, those terms that you have, the short term, the long term. But you notice that, like Regina has mentioned, if an employee is not content with their manager, maybe their boss at work, the team that they are working with, they may not even maybe last long in that organization. They will tend to leave tomorrow. So you find that even if these employees as individuals or as a group, if they're not given that opportunity, or they are not encouraged to pursue their own maybe personal vision in that organization, I tell you, Samantha, they will not be confident. They won't have that confidence in that organization. And the outcome will be very, very, very bad, very sad, because they want to stick in that organization. They even start thinking maybe of going out to go and look for other maybe organization where they can work with. So trust building is very, very important in an organization. Maybe I can also just mention the self-empowering mindset, which is also another important thing for all the employees in the organization. You find that if these employees, they're supposed to have confidence in themselves, and they can even solve or sort out these issues if they are very confident in themselves. And at the same time, they can also maybe encourage other employees and to show that courage and compassion to the other employees if they have that self-empowering mindset.
And Miss Titi, before we move on to the next question, any additional notes on this question?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think what I just want to bring in is the fact that the leadership need to be trusting each other. Because many times we think it's about the leadership and the employees, but I think when it comes to trust building, there should be trust amongst the leadership, and the employees or the rest of the organization must be able to see that our leadership do trust each other, because then that helps even when instructions and everything is coming, and it sort of dispels mistrust, misjudgments and stuff like that. So that's the point that I just want to add, to say leadership need to be trustworthy as a team, and also to show the rest of the organization that they do trust each other. Yeah, thank you.
I agree, ma'am. We'll touch more on the subject of leadership in a while. We have a question on that later. But for now, Ms. Regina, I'm going to go back to you and about how you talked about psychological safety and how it's very important that there's a confidence within employees to trust their employers and their managers or their leaders. So let me ask you now, ma'am, why do you think trust building is a key in bringing out the best in employees? And how does this impact the organizational culture as a whole, Ms. Regina?
Yeah, I think I already touched on most of it actually before. And what I also want to pick up on, though, again, is this self-empowering mindset. This is an integral color. It's one of the pillars of my powerful leadership transformation framework, actually. And we can only have a self-empowering mindset, develop that more as an employee when we have a trust-built environment that we operate in, right? We have to really be empowered. And I always say, no one can empower you but yourself. This is why I call it a self-empowering mindset. We can only guide others to empower themselves, right? For example, as coaches or mentors. But I do believe that, you know, we can help people move out of their victim mindset and step into a self-empowering mindset. And this also has to do with their vision and how they see themselves in the environment and within the corporate vision or within their team vision. Yes, it's important to have visions that are well defined on all those levels. This also creates trust, because oftentimes we see that there's a disconnect between what a company vision says in writing and what they actually implement and how they treat their employees and how they lead their employees and what their products really do in all these senses, right? This is also about trust, right? And we also mentioned humanizing earlier. So, you know, there's a huge aspect here. We talk so much about diversity and inclusion, but what does that really mean, right? When we talk about diversity and inclusion, we oftentimes talk about categories instead of humans. And so it's really, really important. The correlation between this humanizing factor, I call it humanizing the workplace in my work. This correlation is huge. True integration cannot happen without trust, right? And humanizing the workplace is a concept that I came up with in the context of inclusive leadership specifically also, because in my opinion, putting people into categories and into all these different groups is not inclusiveness. We need to consider and respect the employee as an individual with their unique talents and skills, rather than seeing them as part of a category. And that's truly honoring diversity, and that's the humanizing piece. And this also can then build more trust, because I'm now respected as the individual being that I am, yes? So this is what I wanted to add, but I think most of it was said earlier.
Yes, but the specific examples and specific scenarios always help solidify an idea, ma'am. And especially now, this point is very impactful because of the current day situation where there are remote operations or online and distant operations, which make the human touch seem lessened in an organization. So speaking of, and going back to the idea that leadership and correct leadership in an organization, well, politically, that's very hard to define, but leadership is very important in any organization. Let me ask Ms. Titi and Dr. Nathan now, how would you resonate with managers about the importance of practical integration as a real need or a practical matter in an organization? Ms. Titi?
Thank you. I think like what has just been said, leadership does play a very important role in terms of directing the organization. They play that strategic role. So I think management is there to even strategize in terms of the practical integration for the organization. So that should be actually part of the strategy. It's not something that we're just going to say, okay, when we are out, but I want to believe that it must be part and parcel of the strategy. And this strategy of integrating, of engaging employees must also be very clear. It must be well communicated to the employees, to the various departments and the various sections. But also, one other thing that I feel managers need to be to take note of is that sometimes even if they've come up with a strategy, there are also strategies that come from the bottom. So I believe that it's the responsibility of the managers to then take the strategy that they had and the strategies that are coming, because what is also very key in organization, if we're going to have that free mind, there are going to be new ideas that are going to be coming. There's going to be new integration and new systems that emanate from the people themselves. So I want to believe that for me, the role of managers now is then to fuse in their management strategy that they came up with and what is actually maturing and just emanating from the people, and then they fuse this to come up with a better practical integration strategy for the organization.
It's a very nice way to see it. Managers are more of bridges rather than an
Yes.
actual mode of change. Dr. Nathan, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think Regina and CCLs, they have brought up very, very good points there. But just in addition to what they've said, you find that managers indeed, Samantha, they should realize and appreciate the importance of practical integration as a practical matter in every organization where they are as managers, especially when it comes, to improve employee satisfaction and loyalty. Because when you look at employee satisfaction in some circles, in some sectors, they also term it to be job satisfaction, which is a very important thing in every organization. And it talks about, an extent to which that individual, that employee in that organization is happy with the job that he or she is doing, as well as the role that it plays. So you find that if you go into the human resources, there are a lot of theories that have come up. Some of the theories talks about expectations, and these theories, Samantha, of expectation, they say that satisfaction depends on the gap between what an employee expects from a job and what they actually get. So employee satisfaction is very important when it comes to this practical integration. Even just the loyalty itself, employee loyalty, this is also another important thing, because the employees who are loyal to an organization are even going to stay in that organization. They won't be thinking of maybe looking for what we can call maybe greener pastures or alternative or employment opportunities, because they are very loyal to that organization and they will stick and contribute to the smooth running of that organization and hence achieving the goals and objectives of that organization.
I would agree with all these points, especially in the fact that you said that there's loyalty and satisfaction that are interlinked. And overall, this would lead to higher productivity and a better organization in general. So again, going back to what we discussed a while ago with Ms. Regina, Dr. Nathan and Ms. Titi, would you agree that the relationship between practical integration and conversational intelligence is a means to fill the gap in organizations, which is more present now because of online or remote operations? Dr. Nathan?
Yeah, and Samantha, online operations, I should say, Samantha, that they have come to stay. Whether we like it or not, the online operations is there. We're not sure, Samantha, when these restrictions as well as the lockdowns are going to stop completely. So as these lockdowns and the restrictions continue, we just have to use the online operation to carry out maybe a practical way to engage in practical integration, to engage our employees so that the employees can be engaged. I can give a very good example, Samantha, of our university, which is UNICAF. It's a very good example of online. We are the pioneers of online learning, and it's going on well. So I think this is the gap. It has, closed that gap that was going to be left behind if the online was not there, if the online operations were not there. But because it's there, we'll continue with all the, practical integration of the employee in that organization there.
Yes, and I remember, Doctor, if there are any viewers that tuned into our last episode, we closed the session saying that they should embrace change and stop resisting it because it's gonna come eventually.
Exactly.
So, Ms. Titi, yes, Doctor, I completely agree. Ms. Titi, any thoughts on the growing gap because of online operations?
Yeah, what is actually exciting me here in Zim, I've discovered that a number of big organizations, the lockdown conditions have been lifted. People are free to go to their workplaces. But for some reason, a number of organizations, big organizations, non-governmental organizations have decided to continue working from home. They have not actually gone to work. So I think like Dr. Nathan is saying, this thing is not just now it's no longer really about the pandemic, but people have actually found a new zone, of work, a new workplace actually online. But what I want to say is key for me is for us to ensure that we are practically engaging and we are we are not losing anybody in the maze. I think it's very important to be systematic in the online communications that we might be using, for instance. So I'll take an example. An organization need then to agree to say our communications are on email, for instance, and they might be in a WhatsApp group. So sometimes you find that employees, they receive a message on WhatsApp group and they reply on email, and the vice versa. And there's a whole lot of miscommunication, delays, and that kind of stuff. So what I think will help encourage good engagement is that the organization needs to be systematic. They need to be in agreement. And also scheduling is very, very key to say, okay, when you receive an email, probably we're working on a document as a group, we are track changing and all that. How long should one take with a document? So I think it has to be systematic, and there has to be a whole lot of scheduling, to say every morning when we wake up 8 o'clock, everybody check your emails. What's there? What are the issues? What do you need to work on? So that way to be able to really improve. Otherwise, there's a whole lot of disturbances with the working from home. There are the kids, there are, if there's no scheduling, we can actually lose it out. And, somebody, if they're not given the feedback on time, they might actually get disgruntled and that kind of thing. So what I think is very key is to be systematic about it, to have those feedback system, and to have a good schedule in terms of how the communications are going to be done. Otherwise, it's here to stay, and we need to embrace it.
Yes, and I think we can connect this to what Ms. Regina said about conversational intelligence and communication. There really is a very big leap of improvement when communication is improved. So I think we can connect that to this. So in the process of talking about the evolution of workplaces and the industry and the economy nowadays, let's talk about the topic of change. So a question for the three of you. Do you think that practical integration can be linked to how people react and often struggle with the continuously changing nature of organizations and, of course, the continuously changing nature of life in general? Ms. Titi, why don't we start with you?
I think for me, what is important is whatever change that is happening in an organization, for people to react or to struggle with it and all that, one thing that can actually smoothen that whole thing is we need a good change management kind of system and processes and all that, so that whatever is happening, each and every employee are aware of what is actually happening, where is their new place, what is their new contribution, how should they react, how should they what. So what I think is very, very key at the end of the day is that for practical integration to take place, all changes, there must be a good change management system. All changes should be clear, should be shared with everybody within the organization, so that they can contribute meaningfully, and also they can share their fears, because every change brings a lot of fear. And the moment those fears are not addressed in some sense, the moment those contributions are not shared, then employees tend to close in and say, okay, let them do whatever they are doing. So what I think is key is to manage that change, so that every employee can actually contribute meaningfully. Thank you.
Yes, systematic organization. Dr. Nathan, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think I agree with what Cici has said, because this practical integration, it can be used very much to make people, the employees and organization more comfortable with change, You see, we always say that it's difficult to accept change, and this is a human aspect. It's a normal thing in an organization. Whenever change comes, some people won't be in a position to accept that change immediately. But however, if the employees, the individuals in that organization are part and parcel of that change, and they know the change is going to take place, they can easily accept that change and even maybe adopt and implement that change that organization is trying to bring on the table. So it's very important that everyone in the organization, understand the change and they accept the change, as long as they are part and parcel of that change. They're involved, they are engaged in that change.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Ms. Regina, any additional notes on change and practical
Yes.
integration?
Change is an interesting topic because I actually love change. But just to go back for a moment to the conversational intelligence, I want to clarify something. So conversational intelligence, or CIQ, isn't just a term, a general term. It's an officially registered trademark, and it's a modality that I studied for coaching, for example. And it's also used in corporate environments in many different senses. But I've been using it in the context also of trust building, and it's a method with specific tools that help us navigate more successfully through team meetings, through negotiations, and improve our verbal communication and build trust. So I just wanted to quickly clarify that so that people know.
Thank you for clarifying that, ma'am. Yes, of course.
So for me, change is I like change because I always say I get easily bored, although I'm never bored because I always have something to do and to think about. But, change is challenging for most humans, though. That's a fact, right? But we also know that change is the only constant. So we need to find a way to help employees become more comfortable with change, help them release their resistance to change, and guide them so they become more willing to embrace change. The more I have found this, so the more personal transformation they have gone through, the easier this should get. Meaning training and coaching can make a huge difference, yes? Practical integration also should be supported by training that focuses on this tapping into our unlimited potential and realizing the tremendous adaptability and creative power we all have inside of us. Sorry. I get so enthusiastic when I talk about this topic. and so the right training also teaches us resilience, for example, which we need for change. Why do we need resilience for change? Well, because change always means uncertainty, ambiguity. We need to offer tools that deal with this uncertainty and ambiguity as part of this integration. That's what I believe.
Mm-hmm. So in the topic of change and the constant nature of it, Ms. Regina, let me ask you, you have written about new business consciousness in the past. So what does this stand for, and how is it related to the integration of employees?
Yes, thank you. So I wrote an article which I published on my website, transformyourperformance.com /new business consciousness. So the website is transformyourperformance.com/new business consciousness. This is where you find this article, the full article. And this is about leading and interacting with others respectfully from our hearts. Yeah, this is why in my work I also talk about heart set, not just mindset, which is only 50%. We need the other 50%, the heart set. And it's about honoring each person's right to self-express, to express their unique genius. Everyone is a genius in their own way, yes? And to thrive through that genius, through their purpose, and not force them to fold themselves into a box, that fits our system somehow, because actually that is much more productive and much more creative. We want to work with the human, not just as a resource, but as a human being. And this consciousness requires compassion with our coworkers, with our teams, clients, customers, suppliers, all our stakeholders, really. In my article, I ask, for example, what if we could exchange prejudice for empathy, judgment for compassion, competition for co-creation, separation for connectedness, contempt for respect, and fear for love? These are the basic principles. So I'd like to invite you right here and now to close your eyes for a moment and imagine such a work environment. What could that be like? What would it feel like to operate in a nurturing environment like this every single day? Go into your workplace, whether it's working from home or in person in the office, and experience this every day rather than a workplace that depletes our energy. Yeah, so in a welcoming organizational culture where all come together in partnership and where we practice transparency and respect. Wouldn't that feel good? So if you did close your eyes, open them now. Well, we're meant to feel good at work. That's the point, right? To be happy and feel fulfilled through the work we do and the impact we make. And this means as leaders, we have the responsibility to work towards this scenario, even if it's not perfect right away. Work towards an organizational culture where all can thrive if they want to.
It's a very impactful
Sorry,
image. But my
Samantha,
favorite, it was so
if I may
beautiful.
just come in.
Of course,
I
Miss
think when
Titi, go
Regina
ahead.
was speaking, I just got to that zone where I say to myself, I think I've been expecting a lot from others and not giving it myself. You know, sometimes you go there, you yourself have got content, but you don't want others to, you know, you don't have empathy and everything. So thank you very much for that, Regina. And I think I need to be more introspective and move forward. We'll visit the website and look at the article. Thank you.
Yes, I'm guessing that you have very high standards for yourself, so you think others should comply with those standards too. You know, and that's what we tend to do. So we sometimes need to put ourselves in other people's shoes and just say, okay, they're just doing it differently. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a very beautiful message, Ms. Regina. Actually, I really like the part where you said we should trade out prejudice for empathy. Because even when we try to be conscious about not being biased towards a certain cluster of people, we always have some kind of prejudice or stereotype in our mind. And it's a conscious effort to always battle it, to always see past it. So fear instead of love, we should have love instead of fear. It's a very powerful message. Okay, to move on, Ms. Titi, coming from an HR background, I'm going to ask you, do you think that practical integration can be considered a tool in creating an effective and sustainable organizational culture?
Definitely, because one thing that practical integration does bring is, like I've been said, is loyalty. One thing, it brings a sense of belonging. And because you are allowed to be creative, to be innovative, that environment you want to stay is going to be sustainable because you feel this is the place. You look forward to going to work. So I was just on internet in the morning and Google, I was on Google actually, and they were saying the coming up of Gmail and other products, what's the other one? I'm forgetting the other one. We're actually a result of the innovativeness that is allowed within the organization. So we have got directors, yes. So it's sustainable in the sense that everybody feels at home. Everybody feels their talent is recognized. Everybody feels their creativity is honored. So practical integration is the way they stick around. They want to belong. They don't want to go anywhere. Like Dr. Nathan talked about greener pastures. There is no greener pastures because if I'm in that organization, it's not even about the monetary value that I get, but that intrinsic value, that whatever ideas, my ideas are being appreciated. They are becoming part of the company strategy. They are growing the company. They are, in some cases, on a bonus, profitability is increasing. Performance, we are well branded as an organization. That is satisfying, and definitely that does bring a sustainability. And also, when people are part and parcel of what is happening, there is ownership. So it's no longer the board's resolution. It's no longer the management's position. It's our position as an organization. So you tend to feed a lot into it, build into it, because it's also you. It's part of you. It's what the organization, and you are part of the organization. So at the end of the day, yes, practical integration does contribute a lot to sustainable development within the organization.
I agree, ma'am. And of course, a sense of belongingness, like everything we've said before, sense of belongingness would raise loyalty, it would raise employee satisfaction, and hopefully improve productivity as well. To move on, let's go to Ms. Regina. Ms. Regina, we've already spoken about leadership and its importance. So let's go back to that topic really quickly. In your point of view, why is self-leadership and personal transformation critical for authentic, transformational leaders? And what are some essential elements that this personal transformation would include?
Well, I always say, I always say leading starts with self, period, right? You cannot lead others if you don't know how to lead yourself. And self-inquiry is what leads them to self-discovery. So it starts with self-inquiry, we get to self-discovery, which then leads to greater self-awareness and self-knowledge, and only then can we transform. And leaders that transform themselves can inspire others to transform as well. I also wrote an article about this for a magazine just recently. So transformational leadership must be authentic leadership. And authentic leadership includes a leader, the leader person, right? So it includes themselves. What do they stand for? What are their values? In order to represent our values and what we stand for, we first have to become clear on what they are, right? And what is it that we stand for? We also must know that our strengths are, what our strengths are on the one hand, and what our shortcomings are on the other hand, how we are perceived, how others perceive our words, how they perceive our behavior, and how do we communicate, how do we come across. That is about self-awareness in connection with social awareness. Yeah, so self-awareness in connection with social awareness. In my view, the most beneficial type of transformational leadership is heart-driven leadership, ethical leadership that turns into a partnership, where power is shared and not exerted over others, not the old model, the authoritative model. Yes, authoritative approaches do not really benefit the expected outcome we want to see. And hierarchical organizational structures are outdated, we know that. But how do we implement the newer ones? That's the challenge, right? So how do we move, how do we shift and make that transferal into the more productive and more agreeable systems? So we must move toward a more participative approach, which is what integration is really all about.
So to lead others, you should know and lead yourself first. Another one-liner, ma'am. You're just giving us one-liners that you can use over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So let me address the question to all three of you now. Would you deem practical integration a general and broad concept that should be adopted by all organizations? Dr. Nathan, what do you think?
Yeah, I should say, Samantha, that it should be adopted by all the organization there, and it's very, very important that it's appreciated. We've talked about, involvement of the managers and the employees, working together. That will mean a lot. You see that if they are part and parcel even of the change that is taking place in that organization, like I mentioned, they're integrated, they're engaged in that organization, and they feel that they own that organization. They feel part and parcel of that organization. And in the process, you find, like we have said, productivity is going to go up. Everyone will be so happy. They'll be smiling. When you are entering the office, you're happy. I've seen some of the organizations where even just greeting somebody in the morning when they arrive at work, it's a challenge, it's a problem, because they are not part of that organization. They feel they're not part of that organization. But if everyone is together, it helps, and you are going to achieve a lot of things into that organization.
Ms. Titi, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, very agreed to what Dr. Nathan you've said, but I'll just divert a little bit and say this integration even starts at a family level, with family, with our spouses, our children, and that kind of thing. So that's how important it is actually. Then one dimension that I want to bring is that I believe one of the integration that is very key in organization is amongst the employees, amongst the workers themselves, because the manager might try to integrate everybody, but when tasks now are done within the teams, within the departments, and some people, like Regina, you've just put it, they're just contemptuous about the next person. So when a task is given, they try by all means to do it themselves, and I'll outline or sideline the other employees. So I think it's very key, and it needs to be a culture within the organization where integration is actually happening at various levels. Even those visions that were being talked about, the units and stuff like that, that is also very, very key amongst the employees, because as HR, you then always hear this conflict and that kind of stuff. And sometimes most of the root is actually more sometimes like the other person doesn't want to integrate the other person. They don't want to engage the other person. Favoritism, all those other dynamics. So I feel practical integration is very, very key on all levels within the organization. Thank you.
Ms. Regina, any additional thoughts on this?
Yes, so I think, we talked a lot about remote work as well. And I believe that in this situation of remote work, and this also happened before, it's not just happening now. There are people who work with other, people in other locations, for example, right? But it is even more important in those situations of remote work to encourage networking, even beyond your team, not just within your team, yes? And to also set up dynamics and systems. We talked about systems earlier, yes? Systems to promote team bonding. For example, to not only talk about work itself in a weekly team meeting, but maybe go around the team, go around the room and have everybody share something specific. This is also a good way to have people speak who wouldn't usually always speak, maybe introverts. If you have a specific theme that you ask the team for, and everybody has an opportunity to speak for a minute, then this encourages everybody to speak up and to have a voice. And I think this is even more important now, because the natural networking, in the coffee kitchen or whatever that dynamics was in the past is not happening now. So I think this is something that I wanted to add.
So to expound on your answer, Ms. Regina, let me ask you, what is your signature approach for greater employee integration?
Well, I have two basic modalities that I work with. One is my own, and one is one that I studied that I mentioned earlier. So in terms of leadership and leadership training, my approach is what I call humanizing the workplace. And it's about honoring the individual employees with their unique brilliance and genius, but also with their unique needs. And this is where I use a lot of this modality, conversational intelligence, because it has excellent tools, very specific tools that we can apply. And it's also complementary to my other framework that I created myself, which is powerful leadership transformation. So conversational intelligence gives me the verbal element, which is the complement to the other elements of my signature framework, which is called powerful leadership transformation. And it's a transformational leadership approach for all levels, really, because we can also be leaders at any level, really. We don't have to be in a leadership position to show a leadership attitude. Actually, we should do that before we get there, so that we are recognized as leadership candidates, right? So I use the powerful leadership transformation content in both group trainings and in one-on-one coaching programs. And it has 4 pillars. The first is a self-empowering mindset and heart set. The second is distinctive uniqueness, which ties into the unique brilliance topic, yes, and into the whole diversity topic. The third is a body and energy conscious presence, because we know now that all we are is energy, but in business, we never talk about energy, and we're missing out on a huge, powerful impact factor here. And the fourth is a consequence of the 3 previous ones, and it's inspired and effective action. So these are the 4 pillars of that framework, and they have proven to help people be more successful as individuals, but also as leaders.
So I'm going to move along now. Dr. Nathan, I have a question for you. So how would you address the fear in employees to integrate themselves into organizations? And of course, when we ask this, we also consider the question of how apprehensiveness within the organization can be lessened while participation is encouraged. Dr. Nathan?
Thank you very much, Samantha. You know, when we talk about fear, like we have already mentioned in passing when we are discussing this important topic, you know, fear in employees to integrate themselves into, you know, organization. You know, it's a very common thing that is there in most of the organizations today. You see, when you just mention just the word integrate, you know, Samantha, you are simply talking about, you know, combine one thing with another in an organization to form one. You know, in an organization, it means you're bringing everyone together in that organization, from the topmost you know, person in the organization, who can be the CEO, the managing director, to the bottom man in the organization, to bring them together so that they work together. Now there is that fear in most of the you know, of the employees to be integrated in the organization. Now, they fear to make suggestions. They fear to bring out very good ideas. They fear to point out maybe even the negative things that are there in that organization. Now, the question, Samantha, is why do they fear? Yes, they fear. If you look at our maybe setup in our African, most of these African countries, even in Zambia in particular, and other countries around the world, you find that the economy is getting bad, and most of these employees, when you get a job, you find a job somewhere, they start guarding it religiously, you know, very jealously, that they tend to hide in a certain corner so that they don't bring out those negatives. And they fear that if they bring out those negatives, even suggestions and organization, they can be fired. Tomorrow they are going to lose a job. Yes, of course, you agree with me, Samantha, and everyone, that these employees can even be maybe the breadwinner. They are the ones who are bringing bread and butter on the table for the families. So they fear that if they lose a job tomorrow, it will be very difficult for them to sustain their lives, to bring, you know, food in the house, to pay for school fees for the children, hospital bills. And when you look at our African society, especially also even in our country, you find that we live as extended families. So they also fear who's going to be looking after my old parents, my grandparents, my uncles, my aunties. So they fear to come out in the open in the organization because they don't want to lose that job that they have. So they tend to be quiet and they don't bring those negative things or suggestions. It saddens me, Samantha, sometimes to hear something bad has happened in an organization. Then this employee says, I knew it was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But why didn't you come out? They fear
Mm-hmm.
that maybe if I come out, I'll be fired. Now, you also talked about, you know, apprehensiveness within an organization. How can it be lessened? How can it be reduced? Samantha, this is a very good thing. You find that most of the employees, because they fear, they are anxious, they are concerned, they are nervous, they are worried, they are agitated. But all these can be lessened, and it can even be removed completely by maybe an organization to be very transparent. If you talk about just an organization that is transparent, it's just like, you know, you're allowing light to pass through a certain object. So even in an organization, you have an organization there, people should see everything in an organization. So the simplest definition maybe of a transparent workplace is we can say operating in a way that is going to create openness between the managers and between the employees. This type of openness, Samantha, between the managers and the employees will create some trust, will create, that successful organization, and everyone will be working together, and they won't even have that fear of bringing out maybe important things or suggestion in an organization because they will be fired. So it's a very important thing to put across and make all the employees realize that no, they can contribute, they won't be fired, they won't be, asked to leave their employment. They want to go out in the community or in the society without a job, without the money, without an income, but they are part and parcel of an organization. So that fear should be removed from that organization. Then the employee will be working so nicely.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Yes, I do agree with that, especially when we connect it to other points, such as how communicating with employees would be very beneficial in any scenario. I was supposed to ask you another question about how practical integration would relate or translate in a company's reputation or image to the external society, but we're running quite out of time. So let me just make this assumption that after all the discussions we've made today, it's already needless to say that practical integration really does help a company's branding, not just with the external society, but also through their employees. Because as employees feel loyal and they're satisfied with the organization, for sure it will translate no matter where they are, regardless of whether they're in the company and their performance is being measured, or how loyal they are when they talk to their friends, they talk to their families about how satisfied and how they feel a sense of belonging, like Ms. Titi said, to an organization. So let me ask you the final question we have for today. How do you view the next step in the process of making practical integration a focal point in reaching success for all organizations? Ms. Titi, let's start with you.
For me, I think what is important is to be practical about everything that we set to do. Even the issue of fear and trust that was being said. So if we go to the organization, to the employees and say, we are trustworthy, but practically, how are we actually doing it? So that's number one. Then number two, Dr. Justin always talk about inquiry and engagement. Let's inquire, let's engage, and let's communicate and allow feedback to come back so that it's a cycle, where we actually implementing something. Is it working? Is it not working? Then what can work? There's that cycle that we need to continuously be involved in. So I think for me that's what is very, very key. And let's be practical. So at the Center for Organizational Leadership, when the students are doing their OD lessons, one of the things that is key is the students should have a case study, should actually learn and be practical in the organization about the thing. So in most cases, we are learning so many things all over the show, but we are failing to practice them in the organization. So what I think is very key is to learn to be practical. Like what we have learned today, let's go and practice it in the organization. And from there, I think we'll move and improve our strategies and our everything every day. Thank you very much.
Thank you also. Dr. Nathan?
Yeah, Samantha, maybe just to link up with what you just said, I remember you mentioned time is running and you talked about reputation and that practical integration, how it can build a company's reputation. Yes, I just wanted to say that it's also a marketing tool. You have already mentioned that. But looking at the question that you have asked is we have to consider, bringing in all the HR leaders into place, and those who are in the SMEs and also maybe senior leaders, they should participate maybe in the upcoming conversations, and they should also open their doors for collaboration. That will help very much integrate, to have a practical integration in that organization.
Ms. Regina, any thoughts on this question and final notes?
I would actually love to hear from our audience at this point, because I think we've talked a lot, and I would love to hear what questions they have at this time.
So am I. I'm looking forward to it. Dr. Justin, should we open the floor for any questions from the audience?
Yes, sure, you can go ahead.
Are there any questions from the audience? You can send it through chat or feel free to open your mic at this point.
I have a question.
Hello, Mr. Patrick.
Hi.
Good morning, I think, to you.
Good morning. Yes, early morning,
morning.
but that's commitment. I work with organizations to move from industrial age hierarchies, which create silos and are prescribed boundaries within the design of the organization. My experience has been that all these great concepts, and thank you very much for all the presenters here and speakers here, all you individuals. Every point was excellent. Within the organizational design of a hierarchy with silos, there are prescribed boundaries as a closed system. So yes, you can move things a certain degree. So I work with moving from those industrial age to something that fits more of the 21st century, which is collaborative networks, designs of organizations. So the question is, how does an organization move from the 19th century Tayloristic hierarchical silos to a 21st century network design of an organization that is an open system versus the closed system of the 19th, 20th century hierarchies? How do you move that organization from there and continually develop the organization? Because what I do is create emergent organizations that are where change is natural. People flow with the change in present time, not a past vision. I mean, a future vision, but a living vision, a living culture. And they create self-agency in that culture, so people know that they can influence their environments and influence their personal development. So just to throw around some ideas, how do you move from that industrial age silo into more 21st century networks designs for organizations?
I can start. While I might not have the entire solution for you.
No, I'm not looking for a solution.
I do want to say that it's been done. Judith Glaser, who founded and created the conversational intelligence methodology, she actually did this with some organizations, and she has a book where she talks about those case studies, and you might want to read it if you haven't already. It's just as an inspiration. It doesn't give you all the methodology, but it is possible. Of course, you know, this required bigger projects, right? It required a lot of group coaching, and she had a team to work with and all of that, and she even worked internationally with teams who opposed each other in the past and now work together smoothly. So it can happen. Yep. But also I think the first step is, and you know this of course, is to lead with the benefits, right? Look at the numbers and say, okay, what's not working now? What do you want to improve? And go to top leadership and really get their buy-in for the benefits of what could it look like and how could it impact their numbers, because they look at numbers, right? And then I think once you are through that barrier, it's important to get buy-in at all levels of leadership, because oftentimes where things actually get stuck is at the mid-level. Because, you know, they look at their numbers too, but they look at their goals and what they need, and they don't look so much at, okay, what do I need to do today to create a better tomorrow? Yeah,
they look at what's in it for me.
Right. But if you can somehow bring that across, what's in it for them, you know, this is why it should ideally start from the top, because then if they get that encouragement, and if those goals are integrated into their number goals, then, you know, then it looks a bit different. If their reviews are done in a way that, you know, that this other goal has an impact as well on their compensation, then it changes, right?
Excellent. So basically you're saying it's part of the business strategy. It's not a nice thing to do, but it's a business strategy in order to enhance everything you've said and everybody has said in the last hour.
Sorry, can you say that again? I missed the first part of your question.
I guess what I'm just agreeing with you that this transformation to a different design of the organization that creates open systems is a good business strategy.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Rather than I think so. It's a nice thing to do.
Well, it's both. It's not, you know, it's both really, yes. But you want to lead with the business strategy because that's what they want.
There you go. Exactly. They can relate to that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
I hope this helped a bit.
Helps a lot.
Titi, Dr. Nathan, any thoughts on Mr. Patrick's question?
Yeah, I think Samantha, Regina has covered it so well there, and I'm happy that Patrick has even appreciated that this is a very wonderful conversation there, because if you put an organization there, a business, and it's true, it becomes a business strategy there. yeah, I think it has come out so nice, so well. I support that too.
I would agree, and I would like to thank Mr. Patrick actually, because he brings a more realistic view of what we're trying to say, and that's exactly why we tried to label it as a performance strategy, sir. So thank you for reminding us of that and the other viewers. There is a question in the messages, and it's Mr. Tendekai. I hope I'm saying that correctly. I hope it's fine that I read it for you also. So the question is, when you realize all the problems and you see that the organization is probably toxic because the leadership will victimize anyone who tries to bring different ideas, how do you go about that as a subordinate? So Ms. Titi, Dr. Nathan, or Ms. Regina, any thoughts on this?
I'm going to hand it over in just a second because I answered the other question, but I wanted to start with the term subordinate, right? So maybe we can stop calling people subordinates because we are not the king and the queen, and we're not the we're not in a feudalistic system. So they are employees, and yeah, I think, or staff. I don't know what your preferred term is, but I think we also need to do that ourselves as employees, not call ourselves this and see ourselves more as partners. It starts with ourselves as well. And then I'm handing it over to somebody else.
Just in addition to what maybe Regina said there, when you look at, working together, it reminds me of where I used to work some time back, I think Regina said there that if somebody look at himself as a subordinate, of course, even inside your head here, you're already putting yourself at a lower level. That I cannot make decision, I cannot say anything. Whatever I'm going to say, no one is going to accept what I'm going to say. We had a very wonderful, system. We used to call it "Deliver the Promise," working together. Some of you maybe know Dyna Nobel. It's a Swedish company. They're very good at that. I'm not selling them. No, I'm just saying they brought in a very wonderful point that up to now I live with that and I've appreciated. It will deliver the promise. We used to have some, social functions every month. After every 3 months, we come together where we remove away the manager, a subordinate, like we are saying, that culture where everyone is just going to be one in that social function, and everyone will be talking about things, that affects the organization. In that process, we find that everyone was free and they were all working together. Then every Friday, we used to have some toolbox talk. We talk about the safety aspect of the employee, anything that is affecting the employee. That was helping us to be together. It helped us to remove that bossy type of thinking. Somebody is a boss, and then also the person who was down there, maybe who is cleaning our floor, cleaning our offices, was also feeling part and parcel of the organization. In the end, you find that everyone knew the goals and objectives of the organization. Even if you just mention, what does the mission of the organization say? What does the vision? Everyone will bring them out because they appreciate and they are part and parcel of the organization. I thought I can just bring that one now.
Ms. Titi, any additional thoughts on this?
Okay, so as I respond, allow me to bring back that word subordinate for a reason. I think what Regina and Dr. Nathan are saying is very true, but I think this question is coming from, in companies, no matter how we try to integrate, there are those power dynamics. At the end of the day, they are going to be somewhere there. So I think what Tendekai is asking or is saying is that when you are at the end of the power on the continuum, right? When you're at the other end and you are trying to, the bottom up kind of scenario, that's what we have. How do you go about it? So whilst it's the responsibility of the leaders to do that, but in some organization, unfortunately, Dr. Nathan, it's not like that. The leaders want to be the leaders. They want to maintain their positions and they are the bosses. So I think that's where he's coming from. So my answer to that would be one thing, maybe the leadership also fears that some of the subordinates are not trustworthy. So the whole issue of building trust also comes into play. To say everybody in the organization should also try to build trust with the leadership, with one another, and also with the leadership. So sometimes those in leadership certainly resist certain things because we are not coming from a trusted kind of position. So what I would say is one of the key things is also that each and every person within the organization need to build trust with those at their level and the higher level and lower level, so that whatever comes on board, it's accepted. Because sometimes the resistance is not just in resistance, but we have not gained the trust, if I may put it, of the leaders. So I think that is also very key, being able to gain the trust. And this happens over time, and this happens as to how we portray our ideas, put ourselves. We are not coming there to challenge, but we are bringing them as, a contribution. How about this? How about that? If I'm not mistaken, I remember Dr. Justin talking about when he was working as a clerk in a certain bank, and he continuously engaged with the leaders until a certain time where the leader then say that he had gained trust, and the leader say, okay, can you be sending me these reports each and every time? So I think it's also about being trustworthy and not expecting the change to take place immediately. Keep pushing in a soft, well-toned voice, well-toned everything. I think at the end of the day, you'll be able to break through into the leadership. Thank you.
This is exactly why we have these consultative sessions, because we see different points of views with Dr. Nathan and Ms. Tsitsi and the input from Ms. Regina. So are there any other questions or any other discussion points that you would like to raise while our speakers are still here? Mr. Madidi, I believe you're typing. Are you typing in a question? Would you like to ask it? Feel free to unmute your mic if you would like. We can't hear you. We still can't hear you, sir. I'm sorry.
You may have to type it then.
Yeah, you may have to type it. I'm sorry.
Yes, Patrick was saying something.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Patrick. Go ahead while Mr. Madidi is typing.
Okay, just a small comment. In my experience of all my practice for, I don't know, a long time, that unless one gets comfortable with shifting their cognitive and emotional mindset, how they see things, how they perceive things, it's really hard to change, because we create, how we see things is what we create. So to get another person to have shift their mental framework, so critical. It's sort of what's really underneath the iceberg, at the low, what's underneath the dynamics, supporting them to and working with them to create that shift. And that once that shift occurs and they see things differently and they create meaning of them, then different things will be created.
Yes, and if I might just add, it's also about the leaders trusting themselves and not feeling threatened.
Yes.
Because it's also about that. Why do I have to exert power? Why do I have to be authoritative? Well, it comes from a fear to lose my position, an underlying fear to lose my position, right? Yeah. And this is also why I love also what Tsitsi said earlier, because we have to build trust in all directions and at all levels. And if we want to be in charge of our own careers, we have to build this trust with those who are observing us, with the decision makers, with those who are in charge of our promotions. And that is a whole other different topic for another conversation, right? But it's very much tied into today's conversation at the same time.
That moves into culture, giving everybody a different experience in a consistent way creates new norms, new patterns, and the culture eventually will emerge into another form.
Mhm.
So it's that day-to-day practical stuff of a different experience that I've found that really makes a difference.
Yeah. That's
So,
why personal transformation is
sorry,
so
ma'am.
important. Sorry, no, go ahead.
No, I'm so sorry. So, Mr. Madidi has already typed in his message. So, he said, I was following Regina and Tsitsi's response to Mr. Tendakai, but I kind of think that there are some leaders who are resistant to change, especially when being proposed someone junior to them. From previous experience and experiences of colleagues, both from business relationships and voluntary organizations. So that's Mr. Madidi's input. Thank you so much for your input, sir. Dr. Justin, do we still have more time?
I think we can wrap up in 5 minutes.
Okay, so are there any other questions or any closing notes from our speakers or any of the participants? Mr. Patrick, anything else you would like to share?
This whole thing about resistance to change, I've written about it so much, it's a myth. It's not the resistance to change, it's how change is brought about. It's the process of change. And if the process of change is mechanical, technical, doesn't fit, then people will resist it because their experience is not congruent with what they desire and what they want. So I can talk about this for 3 days, but I really think resistance, it's how you bring about change is the key.
Okay, any closing notes from Miss Titi? I'm sorry, there's some kind of background noise from somebody. But any other additional notes from Miss Titi, Dr. Nathan, or Miss Regina before we close this session?
For me, I think this has been a very good consultative forum, and I think we have managed to unpack, some of the areas around practical integration that need further unpacking. So I'm saying let's move on with these workshops. Let's continue to interact. Let's continue to network and continue to unpack, because sometimes I'm thinking, even like Patrick have said, it's not that people do not want, but sometimes how we bring in these things. So I'm thinking this is going to be a very interesting series, and we'll be able to adopt better and good strategies. Otherwise, thank you very much for everybody. I've learned a lot today. Thank you.
Dr. Nathan?
Yeah, thank you very much, Samantha. I think I also agree. I've learned a lot, and a lot of points have come up that we can use in our day-to-day life at work. And something that I've appreciated very much is, let us work together from the topmost person there to the person down there. That will help us. Then we are going to achieve the goals and objective of our organization. At the same time, the last discussion has brought about fear. We don't have to fear who my boss is, but work together. And those examples that came out are so good. And also the use of the word subordinate. I think, yes, Tisi said, no, it's still there. Yes, I agree, it's still there, but let us try by all means to remove it.
To fight it.
So that we can be together, no subordinate. Like Regina said, there's no king, there's no queen there, but we are one. I've appreciated this discussion, and I look forward to more wonderful and discussion in the future. Thank you very much, Samantha.
Ms. Regina?
Yes, thank you so much for an amazing conversation today. Thank you to everybody who participated in the conversation at the end as well. It's been wonderful. I have learned as much, as we possibly can learn in an hour's time. And I look forward to our continuous brainstorming, so future sessions, and I know we've already talked about how to take this to the next level, so watch out for that, stay tuned, and I know Dr. Justin wants to also say a few words before we close.
Dr. Justin?
Thank you so much. This is an interesting conversation, and it's a new way of thinking, it's a new way of doing things. We have done a lot of PowerPoint presentations. We have done a lot of trainings in organizations. We have done a lot of these writings of articles and stuff. but we still have our organizations deeply rooted in the 19th and 20th century strategies, as Mr. Patrick has said. So we need a new way of doing things. And this new way of doing things comes with conversations. Some of us don't believe in trainings unless you are doing technical training. Though we have a lot of people who do leadership training, behavioral-based trainings, conversations are fundamental to the transformations that we want to see in our societies, in our organizations, and everywhere. It's nice to do PowerPoint presentations and be on flyers and all that. A lot of people like that. We prepare a flyer, we do a PowerPoint presentation, we do a webinar and all that, and people go and that's it. But we are saying we need a new way of doing things, and we are looking forward for more organizations, more individuals to be part of this series of conversations. As UNICAF University in Zambia, the Center for Organization Leadership and Development from Zimbabwe, Transform Your Performance, Premio Capio, we are ready to facilitate such conversations even with your teams in organizations. Just to come to an organization and sit down with your team and have a conversation for 20 minutes, it has huge impact than a whole lot of trainings that people are doing and marketing through all these marketing techniques that are happening. But for us, we are so much concerned about real change and real transformation. We are not looking for names. We are not looking for fame. We want to have something that is really transformational in organizations, and we want those who are transformation-minded to partner with us and facilitate these conversations. So those who would want to speak in our next conversations, this is going to be a monthly series. Please feel free to engage with us, and we need you to engage with us on time, like this week for those who want to be part of the conversation next week, because Samantha would need a whole month to prepare for this. It's not just a conversation that happens overnight. It's not a copy-paste conversation. It's not something that we search on Google. We need a month to prepare for this 1 hour conversation. We are moving away from PowerPoint presentations. We are moving away from these funny trainings just to make a living, to really lead transformation in our organizations. And we look forward to that. And I do know my colleague Patrick is ready to be part of our next conversation. And we look forward for other members also on this platform today. Either you're following us on Facebook or you're on this Zoom session, please engage with us and let's plan the next conversation as we lead real transformation in our organizations. And as these panelists have said, it starts at self, and we need that to happen. We need to move away from 20th century thinking in organizations, Taylorism, Fayolism, verbalism in organizations, hierarchical structures, and this division of labor that does not build people, to have more collaborative networks, people engaging in generative conversations, workplaces that are empowering, that helps people to realize their creative abilities. This is what the 21st century thinking should be. We need leaders who lead and not leaders who just hold positions. And this is what we are doing. So on today's session, I would like to appreciate Ms. Regina, Transform Your Performance. I would like to appreciate UNICAF University International and UNICAF University Zambia, and also Premio Capio here represented by Tsitsi, and everyone else who joined us today. This is a series of conversations. It's not a once-off PowerPoint presentation, and we need to engage with everyone. We value every contribution. Even when you think it's least worth it, we really need to engage with you. So please engage with us and let's move this vision forward and make it a living vision and living culture, as Mr. Patrick has said. Thank you so much. Back to you, Samantha.
So I'm sure that all of us hope that we had more time for this very insightful conversation and discussion. But with this, we come to the end of today's session. Again, Dr. Nathan, Ms. Tsitsi, Ms. Regina, we deeply appreciate you giving us not only your time, but all the relevant information you shared with us during this discussion. And to all our viewers and participants who decided to join in with us today, I trust that you gained more knowledge, not just on practical integration, but all the other subtopics that we touched on as well. Like always, thank you so much for joining, and we hope to see you again very, very soon. So again, my name is Samantha Salas. I'm wishing everybody a good day, and please stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Samantha.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Thank you. I'm
Thank
in
you.
for the next meeting. Thank you.
Yes, unmute yourself and say goodbye to us, please. I would love to hear your voices.
Goodbye, Regina. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Regina. Thank you, Doc.
Bye,
Thank you, Tsitsi.
See you
everyone.
next time.
Thank you, Lilian, for
Bye.
joining.
Bye. Thank you.
Next time.
Great to see some of you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.